Former NPA head Shaun Abrahams has submitted his affidavit to dispute allegations made against him at the Mokgoro Inquiry. He's disputing testimony by Deputy National Director of Public Prosecutions, Willie Hofmeyr. The inquiry previously heard how Hofmeyr was sidelined. It's further claimed Abrahams removed him from the investigation into former President Jacob Zuma. The commission's looking into the fitness of NPA bosses Mokgoro Inquiry and Lawrence Mkhwebi to hold office. eNCA's Govan Whittles is here to tell us all about the contents of that particular affidavit. Do we know what the contents is? Govan, are you well?
I'm well, thank you. Yeah, so we know that Willie Hofmeyr is essentially accusing Shaun Abrahams of stifling corruption investigations, particularly related to high-profile figures in society. And Hofmeyr was on the stand at the Mokgoro Inquiry, and he actually said that under Abrahams and Mokgoro Inquiry's leadership, the NPA started to target law enforcement officials who were pursuing these corruption investigations. Hofmeyr at least believes that while Abrahams was in charge of the NPA, a lot of sensitive cases were put on the back burner or completely sidelined. The reasons, therefore, were obviously not explored in the inquiry, but it's clear that Hofmeyr believes that there were nefarious intentions behind those decisions.
Okay, so now this affidavit handed in by Shaun Abrahams now disputes all of that. It's come in late as well, hasn't it?
It has. The deadline to give the affidavit in was the 8th of February, I believe. But Shaun Abrahams here saying that he had to take some time to consult with lawyers about the contents of his affidavit. And that is really reflected in the affidavit. Much of it refuses to engage on the details of specific cases which were mentioned by Willie Hofmeyr on the basis, Abrahams says, that the inquiry is not about him. And the inquiry is only looking into the fitness to hold office of Mokgoro Inquiry and Lawrence Mkhwebi. And Abrahams believes that he therefore doesn't really need to answer to all of the allegations made the NPA's prosecutions policy and against the established good practice tradition within the NPA.
Yeah.
And because of that, a number of things which emerged at the inquiry which may have merited a follow-up, particularly regarding high-profile investigations involving the former crime intelligence boss, Richard Mdluli. A number of those things will simply the report from the panel won't really give instruction to what should happen to those investigations.
Yeah.
Here we're only talking about Jiba and Mkhwebi, and from Abrahams' affidavit, it looks like he's saying, leave me out of this.
Yep. Listen, so the report from the panel from Justice Yvonne Mokgoro was actually supposed to be, the deadline was this week or very soon, but now they have to postpone it now for another 2 weeks because of this late affidavit.
That's right, the late submission. We also have to mention that the evidence leaders have already made their submission. So has Mokgoro Inquiry and Lawrence Mkhwebi. So all of the affidavits, for all intents and purposes, have by this point been considered by the panel led by Justice Yvonne Mokgoro. And the initial deadline was the 9th of March. But now, of course, with this later submission of Shaun Abrahams' affidavit, one wonders whether or not the credibility of Willie Hofmeyr would once again be questioned by the panel, because Shaun Abrahams is actually alleging that Hofmeyr may have some agenda behind his appearance and the utterances he made, particularly regarding Shaun Abrahams. We saw Mokgoro Inquiry's advocate Norman Arendse trying to discredit Willie Hofmeyr during cross-examination. That's because Hofmeyr was really positioned as one of the star witnesses at this inquiry to basically give evidence which showed that Mokgoro Inquiry and Lawrence Mkhwebi is unfit to hold office. But that decision is up to Justice Yvonne Mokgoro.
So this Shaun Abrahams affidavit might actually, and the delay might actually assist Mkhwebi and Jiba in the long run and actually work in their favor.
Well, it depends on how Justice Yvonne Mokgoro reads it. From what I've seen in the affidavit, it seems as if the entire purpose behind it was merely to brush off the allegations made by Willie Hofmeyr, but also to distance himself from anything that Willie Hofmeyr says may have been fueled by political motive. It seems as if Shaun Abrahams denies all of that, and he says as much, albeit with a blanket statement, but he says that he doesn't believe that he should enter into this fray.
Okay, so where to now for the inquiry?
So the inquiry's last session has already sat. So after the consideration of Abrahams' affidavit, along with all the other affidavits, which 22 in number, and then the submissions by the evidence leaders and Jiba's advocate and Mkhwebi's advocate, Justice Yvonne Mokgoro will complete her report. That report was supposed to go in tomorrow. I think it'll be one of the most interesting. And what's important to point out here is that the president may not make the report public immediately after it's submitted, because it would follow that there would be recommendations in that report to the president about their fitness to hold office. So it's unclear how much time might pass between the president receiving this report and him announcing his decision to the public.
You've been following this right from the beginning. Taxpayers will be asking, was it worth it?
The price tag for the inquiry is certainly high. We've heard the cost of the inquiry was at least 100,000 Rand per day, and it sat for about a month, but the speed at which they went through all the evidence, despite all the allegations by Lawrence Mokgoro that the inquiry was unfair, it seemed as if this was a process which delved as deep as possible to get to a reasonable conclusion. And of course, the appointment of Shamila Batoy to the NPA and this inquiry would serve to strengthen the reputation of the prosecuting authority, certainly in the public.
So it was worth it. All right, Govan Whittles, thank you so much. Fantastic stuff. That's Govan Whittles, our reporter, breaking down Shaun Abrahams' affidavit to the Mokgoro Inquiry.